Good morning, everyone. We're up to Perek Gimel Mishna Zion. Previous Mishnah, we learned that there was an order. The Torah mandate, Torah actually forbids us to go out of order from the order of what we're supposed to separate from our new grain. And we said the order is Bikurim, Truma, Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni. So now, and yesterday's mission concluded with Torah's prohibition not to change the order. Now, this mission discusses how do we know there's such an order? From what's the source to tell us what the order is? From where do we know that Bikurim is supposed to precede the Truma? They're what we call the Truma Gedola, the Truma that's supposed to come out of the pile that goes, it's supposed to come out of the pile for the whole pile to the Kohen. Zekari Truma Veracious. This one is called Truma and Rashis, which means first. The Zekari Truma Veracious. And this one is also called Truma and Rashis. This is really an elaboration of the question. And that is that both of them contain the same words. And therefore, that just kind of strengthens the question as to how do we know which one goes first? Well, if one of them is called first, then it's first. The answer is they're both called first. They're both called Truma. Both Bikurim the Torah refers to Bikurim as Teruma, the portion that's lifted up, that's separated. Truma Gedola is called Truma, the portion that's separated or lifted up. And they're both referred to as Rashis, as the first. So if they both contain the same names, the same descriptions, so again, how do we know one goes before the other? Ella, the Mishnah says rather, Yiklimu Bikurim Shein Bikurim Lakol. Bikurim comes first because they are Bikurim of all the portions. Now, what does that mean? So there are a couple explanations to this. The Mishnah is saying Bikurim comes first because it is Bikurim to everything. It is Bikurim. It is the Bikurim of all portions. The word Bikurim itself, according to one explanation, the word Bikurim itself has a connotation of being first, because that's what the very name Bikurim means. I'll read to you here from the Yad Avram. The very name Bikurim, first fruit, that's the meaning of Bikurim, the first fruit, implies that they are the first of all the portions to be designated. That's what that word implies. Now, the word Rashis also implies that it's a first. However, the fact that when the Torah refers to Bikurim as Bikurim, that name itself implies it's a first fruit. So therefore, from the point of the word Rashis, both Truma and Bikurim have that word. But Bikurim itself, the name itself, implies that it is a first fruit. And therefore, that is one explanation as to why it precedes the Truma Gedola. Another explanation is that the reason why we say it is the Bikurim, it is the first for everything, is because when the Torah gives us the mitzvah Bikurim, it gives us the mitzvah Bikurim before it gives us the mitzvah of any of the other separations. The Mishnah means that Bikurim logically precedes the other portions because the commandment to designate Bikurim occurs in the Torah before the commandments to separate the other portions. And therefore, so that's the reason. That's the argument to say that although Truma and Bikurim share the same word, but Bikurim is first for everything. First for everything because the Torah commanded us before about Bikurim before separating anything else. A third explanation to what this means is because that Bikurim is first for all is because, as we mentioned yesterday, Bikurim is meant to be designated while still connected to the ground. And while the produce is still connected to the ground, you can't separate Truma and Meiser. It wouldn't even work. So therefore, from the fact that the mitzvah, the way we do it, takes place at an earlier time, that itself implies that it comes first. And it would come first even if, we mentioned yesterday, even if, let's say, you didn't designate the Bikurim while it was still connected to the ground, you harvested, and now you realize you have to take off Bikurim. Bikurim will still come before Truma because, as we see, the Torah has Bikurim coming first. Okay. So that is the source as why Bikurim comes before Truma. U'Truma l'Rishon, Truma becomes Meiser Rishon. The separation from the whole pile for the Kohen precedes the separation of the first tenth to the Levi, Shehi Rashis, because of the fact that it is rachis. It is called the first. Meaning, their Meiser is referred to as truma also. That word truma that we generally use for what goes to the Kohen, the Torah refers to the Meiser, the 10th that we take also as truma. And therefore, so that word, the shares, but you don't find the word rachis. The word rachis does not appear by Meiser, only by truma. And therefore, the fact that the truma gedola that goes to the Kohen is called rachis, the first, while Meiser Rishon may be referred to as truma. The first time may be referred to as truma, but it's not ever referred to as rachis as first. Therefore, it comes after, the Meiser comes after truma. Truma comes first. And then the last thing the Mishnah mentions is the Meiser Rishon L'Sheni. The first 10th precedes the second 10th. First 10th meaning what we give to the Levi goes before the second tithing, which is either the second tithing you have to eat in Yerushalayim, or depending on the year, we give it to the poor. That tithing that goes to the Levi precedes the second tithing. Why? Sheyesh boy rachis, because the truma, the Meiser rather, may not be called rachis as we just said, but it has something called rachis in it. Because we know that the Levi has to separate from his 10th, a 10th of his 10th that goes to the Kohen. That's called trumas Meiser. That is a truma. That is a type of truma that goes to the Kohen. Because it is a truma, it carries with it the name rachis. It carries with it the word rachis. Truma is called rachis. That means that this truma, the truma that's in the Meiser, is also called rachis because truma carries that description of rachis as first. And therefore, the truma in the Meiser that the Levi separates for the Kohen is also referred to as rachis, as first. And therefore, since the Meiser Rishon, meaning since the Meiser that goes to the Levi, has something in it called rachis, that gives it precedence to the 10th that doesn't contain something that's called rachis. That's what the Mishnah means as its source as to why the Meiser Rishon, meaning the Meiser that goes to the Levi, precedes the second Meiser. Now we go to the Sefer HaMitzvot. Prohibition against eating chametz on the day before Pesach after midday. Shenemar, as it states, you shall not eat chametz over it. Koloimar, meaning al carbon Pesach. You shall not eat chametz while the carbon Pesach, the Paschal sacrifice, is brought. Shezman HaKaravasai, the time for bringing the carbon Pesach begins, Mishah Shavias, from the beginning of the 7th hour, what we call midday. Midday is the conclusion of the 6th hour, where the 7th hour begins. So the beginning of the 7th hour, which is Chatzais, which is midday, that is where, that already Torah gives us a prohibition from eating chametz on Erev Pesach from that time. Torah says don't eat chametz when the carbon Pesach is to be brought, and since the carbon Pesach can be brought, which is brought on the day before Pesach, and the carbon Pesach can be brought starting from midday, therefore, that is where the Torah already gives us a prohibition of eating chametz. One who eats chametz on Erev Pesach after the completion of 6 hours into the day, which is midday, like it receives lashes. When you eat chametz on Pesach, has v'shalom, the punishment there can be kares, a heavily penalty of death. But on Erev Pesach, that doesn't happen. The punishment is lashes. Now, our sages added a prohibition that starting from the beginning of the 6th hour, meaning after the 5th hour of the day, one might eat or have benefit from chametz. And at the 5th hour, meaning after the completion of 4 hours of the day, asar b'achila, the sages forbade one to eat chametz, umutar ba'ana, but one can still have benefit from it. So that's the way it works on Erev Pesach when it comes to chametz. After 4 hours of the day, you may not eat chametz. After 5 hours of the day, you may not have benefit from the chametz either. And after the 6th hour of the day, that is when the Torah's prohibition of eating chametz on Erev Pesach kicks in. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Next mitzvah. Prohibition against eating the fruits of a tree its first 3 years of being planted. As the pasuk says, for 3 years the fruits of the tree shall be forbidden to you; they shall not be eaten. And this law of not eating the fruits of the first 3 years of a tree is called arla. The philosophic arla aser. And even if there's some kind of a doubt as to whether this tree is arla or not, it's forbidden. Now, outside of Eretz Yisrael, halacha Moshe Sinai, it is a law passed down to Moshe from Sinai, meaning there's no scriptural source, but it's part of the tradition of the oral law. It's part of the oral law that was passed to Moshe. Shavade arla asura, something that we know for sure is arla outside of Eretz Yisrael is forbidden. The suffix arla mutter. If it's a question whether it's arla, it's permissible. Balvade arla be'eretz Yisrael chayav malchus. For a person, for something that is for sure arla, and you ate from it, if this took place in Eretz Yisrael, if the tree was in Eretz Yisrael, chayav malchus, you'd be liable for lashes for doing so. But outside of Eretz Yisrael, makin oisai makas mardus, then actually you would get the lashes, what we call referred to as makas mardus, lashes of disobedience, which would be rabbinic lashes. The halacha Moshe Sinai does not carry with it a punishment of lashes, but the sages did institute lashes for eating orla outside of Eretz Yisrael. This applies both by men and by women. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.